Okay, I think I might be live. I'll know in a second. Just kind of like setting up my windows here. All right. Cool. So I'm going to give it a minute before I start, but pretty sure I'm live. So I'll start talking. And Mark isn't going to make it today, just me. But I'm going to go over. Oh, nice. See him live. I'm going to go over these two OpenAI actions. Yeah, what's up, Web3 Dev Doc? Good time to come back. But yeah, so I'm going to do these actions, and I'm going to, right after this, I'll go make them live in production so that everyone can use them. I'm using Dev, so that's our new environment because this is recorded. We're about to switch into the new environment. But yeah, and I figured what I'd do is I'd kind of show these two different actions that we have to start. One is the text completion from OpenAI, which is GPT-3. So you can give it all kinds of just open-ended prompts, and then it gives you text back. And then the other action we did was image generation. So you could give it a text prompt, and then it'll give you an image or multiple images back. And so we just did like building blocks, basically. We just did those base level actions. And what I'm going to do is kind of show those and how they work. And then maybe we can talk about more specific applications of these and like how you would use this in something you're building for clients. Because that's kind of the next step. These are so open-ended that it's like you can do anything with them. It's almost like once you learn them and see them, you're like, okay, now how do I use them? So we'll try to cover both today. I think I could probably start, but I don't know. I'm just giving it some time. Let me make sure this is set up here. Nice. Okay, yeah, I'm just gonna get started. So I've kind of prepared this project just to display these things. This is built off of, just to mention, this is built off of a new template system that should be really cool that we can use. So basically, like in here, I've got, this isn't done. That's why I'm sort of just touching on it and not fully doing it yet. But we've got like a website and the style guide and sort of an app layout. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start all my demos from this project, because then the demos will look nicer and I don't have to spend as much time styling them. But what this actually is a page or a project template that we can convert, do a million versions of these that look all different. And when you bring them in, they replace all your base styles in your project with whatever style you brought in. So like when I drop a button on the page, it looks like this type of button, or drop a heading, etc. And it's going to save a ton of time in development, I think. But for today, I wanted to use it today just so it looks nicer, but it's kind of like a weird not finished state. So I just wanted to mention that. That's why it has this look and it has like a fake company at the top. But what I did was I used the app part of it and just created a page for a text completion demo and an image generation demo. And these are over here, kind of like isolated in these pages. So what I'm going to do to start, I'll start with the text completion. That's the first one. What I'm going to do is basically have a box here, an input for a prompt, and then I have a box for the response. And so we're just going to type any prompt into that, like a full prompt into that box, hit send. It's going to send it to the OpenAI API, which is GPT-3 in this case. And then it's going to give us a response back. And then I can go over some of the options. We put all the options that are available in the action as far as like tweaking and customizing the response. So if we were to look at this right here is the new action, one of the two new actions. So in the future, when I put this live in development, in production, you can just search for OpenAI or GPT-3. You'll see it down here. So I put this in and I filled out my OpenAI API key, which is free to get. I said take the prompt from the element, this text area element right there. And I added a toString, which I'll talk about in a second, just to make sure if there's quotation marks or line breaks in there that it escapes them properly. And then what it's going to do is it's going to send that prompt to OpenAI, and it's going to set the response into this API response variable, and then it's going to run whatever flow I want for success. So I have it set to run this flow over here, OpenAI text completion demo success. And the reason it's important for, in this case, to do the flow to run on success, it's like a callback function, a callback flow. The reason it's important is because it takes AI, or at least OpenAI, a little while to like process. So if you use the wait in between and try to do another action afterwards, it might not wait long enough. In this case, it's just much safer, just like the regular API action has this too, but it's much safer to use the flow and success. So anyway, as you can see here, we just took prompt and we just set that we're saving into API response. And normally it's like this, more settings is not hidden. So that's kind of like the basics. And if we look in API success, the main thing it's doing here is just setting this response text area with the whole response that is getting sent back out of that action. And so just to finish out before I go test it, there's two other things you might have noticed in here. When we run the API call, the first thing I do is I just set a button value, set element value for this button here, and make it say sending. And then on the complete, the first action changes that button value back to send, which is what it originally is. And again, that's for the same reason that the AI takes a little while. So if you were to not change that button or not show any interaction, it feels like it doesn't work. So it's just something to consider when you're actually using this stuff. So yeah, so let's look at this. So I've got text completion up here, and I actually didn't prepare any prompts or anything. But the way that it works, and I'm going to go over, after I show this really quickly, I'm going to switch back to the OpenAI docs and like talk a little bit about like prompt design and what these things, like what you really do with these APIs, because they're all similar. They're all, each different service is a little different, but they're all similar in the way that you kind of do prompts. So I could write something like this: complete this poem, and then poem. Roses are red, violets are blue. Right. And so because it's text completion, which is actually the basis of a lot of the tech stuff, you're giving it some kind of model quickly in this single text box. So I'm saying complete this poem, telling it what to do, and then I tell it what the poem is, and then it's going to complete this text. So it's going to just give me a response back. So it's a little weird to think about because it doesn't know anything about what it's saying or what it's giving back. It's not like looking things up on the internet. It's just doing this weird new AI thing. So you have to play a little bit and get used to it. But let's see if I hit send here, let's see what it gives me. So it says, I love you much more than I knew. You bring me joy when skies are gray. So it completed that poem. And that's all it is, right? It's super powerful, but it's that basic when you show it. And so you can write anything you want up here. You can say like, write a tagline for a donut shop. I don't know if that'll work, but yeah, there you go. So it's like you can do anything you want. So what happens is you think of your idea for an application of this, something where AI can help you. And then basically you'll somehow form this prompt and then somehow do something with the response. And with the response, there's options. I just sort of touched on a second ago that we have these more advanced options. You can have it give different variations, different lengths. You can have it be like super strict in what it returns versus like really creative and kind of going off topic. You can set all these different things. So, excuse me. So I went back into this API or OpenAI text completion action, and I just checked this more settings on. And now I get a few things like the model, which is the actual artificial intelligence language model or whatever you call it that it's using to give you a response back. This one, Text DaVinci 003, is pretty new, like a couple weeks old. So it's got like a bunch. I mean, it's like the best, the cutting edge for GPT-3. There's stuff here for like suffix. So like you can basically like insert text completion. So you can say a prompt, then let the AI fill out, and then have a suffix like complete it afterwards. And it'll use that when it's doing its artificial intelligence. Max tokens is actually like max length. So these are all just direct properties from OpenAI. So I did want to go and just touch on them because if you come over to the OpenAI documentation, and coming down into completions here, they give you kind of like a description of what all these different things are. So for example, like max tokens we saw in there, that's basically, you can translate that to the length of the response. But it's kind of weird how they do it. So it says like a token count is 4 characters or something. I forget where it says that, but it's like, it's a different way of counting than you'd expect. So you kind of read through these. It's sort of new stuff. Temperature is a cool one. Actually, I can demonstrate temperature probably. So temperature, if I have it set to 0, it's a range between 0 and 1. If I have it set to 0, it'll be super strict with the response. So like I could say, complete this, roses are red, violets are blue. It's like doing this off the cuff, but in theory, this will give me like a very similar response each time. So came up with sugar is sweet and so are you. If I run it again, sugar is sweet and so are you, the exact same response. I run it again, slightly different, but it still starts with sugar is sweet and so are you. So you can see they're like, it's strict. They're very similar responses. But if I take that temperature to 1 and do the same thing, it should give me more variations each time. So sugar is sweet, but nothing compares to you. It's a little different. Like that one's totally different. So you kind of control the response with these settings, but you'll probably have to read through this documentation a bit. And also, I should mention, read through this documentation as far as like if you come to this text completion section, it gives you a lot of tips on prompt design and ways that it understands things you can do. And there's also this playground here, an API playground, where you can come in and try things, or you can go to examples and they have a bunch of pre-done stuff for you. So for example, like an advanced tweet classifier, if I look at this, it's going to explain it for me, but I can open it in the playground and I get, this would be the prompt. So you can use that exact prompt if you want to copy this. And these settings on the right are all your settings. So these are set for this prompt in this application that they made, but you can match these in Bildr. So you can see like model, make sure it's on that model. Temperature is 0 for this one. So I'd go put that at 0. Maximum like 60. And so that's, max tokens here. I'd go to 60. So you can basically play with it in the playground or find an example online and translate it directly into this action. And then, sky's the limit. And one last thing to note before I go to the image section, and I should actually check these comments too, is the prompt itself. Sometimes you give it a few examples and then you give it, the dynamic part, the unique question you're asking it, and then you let it respond or something like that. Like you're often doing things where it's not just a big text box that someone types into and that's the prompt. So when in practice, I've done like a few applications with this action already. In practice, you're usually concatenating together a value to create that prompt. So I might have a bunch of hard-coded text as the first part of the prompt, and then I concatenate that in with an element value from an input that a user, typed in, or maybe an input that something they selected. I'll concatenate that in and then hard code and finish out the prompt. That's basically how it's been working for me. And then when you get that response back, it's just text. So sometimes you have to do some like formatting or some parsing. Like for example, I made one that you write a tweet in a tweet draft program and then it generates 3 more tweets like a thread. I had actually like put in the AI, I told it, write 3 tweets, use these characters as a separator. And then when the response came back, I used that separator and separated into 3. So there's some processing you have to do. This is basically a raw input output type of format, but it's super versatile. So it's really cool. So that's text completion. Before I do image generation, let me just pop over to these comments real quick. It looks like people are just chatting, so I probably won't read them all. But if there's any questions or if anybody at Bildr, if there's something I should address, you can just Slack me and let me know. I think everyone's just chatting. Cool. So, here's a question. Maybe is the model setting going to auto update or hard coded? Oh, good question. They're hard coded right now. I can actually show this. So in this model setting here, it's a drop down that's all hard coded. When a new one, so they don't come out super frequently. So when a new one comes out, we'll hard code it into the action. So if you use the action new, you can get the new one. But I made sure that this enter value manually is here. so that if a new model comes out and we don't have any action yet, or if the action's already in your project, it's not going to get updated automatically. You just hit enter manually and you can just type, for whatever that new one is. So yeah, it should be versatile in that way. And also, just to mention too, like I didn't say anything about this action in the background, but this action is just like the API action rewrapped. It's just wrapped and made a little more convenient for OpenAI. So if something didn't work in this action, like if the model is different, you can always go back to just the generic API action and do the same thing and basically have more options to do whatever you want. You just have to learn all about their API. So the beauty of this is we learned all about their API and then we just put it into this action that's fairly easy to use. You still have to learn what these properties are, and I think soon we'll add some better documentation as far as what they all are in easy human readable terms. But we didn't want to mess with it too much now because I don't even know fully myself, how they're all used and what they're all for. So still learning that stuff. So let's see. And I see there's a question in here about hard coding, and if you make updates, customizations to actions, is a good way to share them. We're working on there's a couple things in there about one of the big things we're working on right now with this big release that's about to come out is we're setting it all up for sharing actions in a better way, like the original sharing, or like if you make a change in action and we want to like use that or push that out, we're setting like the structure for that up. So there'll be some big changes coming there and it'll be a lot easier to do that. But as far as actual like pull request updates, that's kind of a separate thing, which at some point we'll do, like we can already compare them. Like we can already know if you need an update, like the stuff's all there. But if someone has an action and they take your action in, right, and then they make changes to it, and then you make changes to the base, we have the pieces to basically do a compare and only update the necessary things or ask them if they want to update or any of that. But we just have never actually put it into a system and made the UI. So at some point we'll be able to do that and people will be able to optionally update their actions. But right now it's not there. And it's version control, and it's the same as for the whole studio. Like we'll have some form of project version control in the same way. That's really powerful. Right now we're just kind of capturing it all. It's just the UI and the systems to do it as a user aren't built out. Okay, so let's see. So that was text completion. Let's go to the next one, image generation. And then if you want, I don't know if I can just talk about more specific applications or maybe take some questions about some of this stuff in more specific applications. But let's see. Here's the next one for image generation. And this is almost the exact same thing. So the way the action is set up and the way that this little demo works are almost identical. The difference here is the actual settings for the image generation are different. It's the same OpenAI API, just a different endpoint with different settings or body parameters. So in this case, I guess I'll just go through before I show it. I'll show kind of a refresher on the flows, but it's basically when you hit send here, it's going to do this image generation demo, which sets the button to say sending, so the user knows. And then here's the OpenAI image generation. That's the second new action. So OpenAI API key. I'm getting the prompt from this text area here. But again, you could get that from a concatenate or other things. Oh, and I forgot to mention on the last one, but I'll mention now. I added toString1 onto this prompt because in a text area like this that's open-ended or like a text input, if they type quote or if they do a line break, I need to escape that or it'll break. It won't send the API call. It'll actually break the API call. So I escape that by adding this path of toString. You can do toString with parentheses, or toString1 is like a deeper version of toString. So I always do toString1. So you can do toString1 on the value, and that works perfectly for a text area, and you'll need to do it if there's quotes. If there's not quotes, you don't need toString1. If there's no quotes or line breaks, it would actually work. But if you were enabling a user to do that and a user put it in, it would just fail. The API call just wouldn't work. So toString1 is what you need. And the reason it's not built into the action is because in other types of input, so if instead of from element value, if I was doing concatenate, it's already toStringing it in the background, and we don't want to double toString it. So it's a little quirk, but leaving it like this is the most versatile and enables you to do like a lot more things rather than we could have escaped it ourselves automatically, but it actually causes more problems than it solves. So prompt API response to the variable, same thing. And then same thing is going to run, in this case, image generation demo success. The success action puts the button text back to send. And then instead of setting the response variable into the text area with set value, we're just going to set it as this image, this placeholder image. It's the same action, actually. It's element set value, but we select the image and we just say from variable API response. So whatever we type in here, the response will show up in here. Here's a demo. So we could say like a blue pig flying. And you can get much more in depth with these descriptions and like really say like a painting of, I mean, maybe I should try that for this. So we'll do like an oil painting of a blue pig flying. Hit send, it's going to send. You can see like this one takes a little longer, and then that pops in. And I didn't control that image, so it's a little huge, sorry, but that's an oil painting of a blue pig flying. And yeah, you can do that for anything you want. I mean, you can type, like I said, you can get really intricate and specific on the prompts, or you can keep them general and let it kind of do its thing and give you whatever it wants. And you have under more settings, you have some more controls or what that response is. So in this case, it's a lot less controls, only 4. And basically you're choosing a size of the image, which you can only have these preset sizes. They're the only ones that work right now. So they're actually hard coded with no enter manually. And then response format, they let you choose URL or base64. So if you wanted to actually bring the code of the image back or just a URL pointing to the image. And depending on what you're using it for, that's why you'd change that. They default to URL. And then I think, I should mention this N here. This is in the image generation and the text completion actions. The N is the amount of responses it will return. So in this image one, if I said N4, it would return 4 different variations of that image based on the prompt. And what it does, what our Bildr action does, is if you have N set to 1, it'll just give you the image as the response variable. It'll just be the image. You don't have to do any processing. But if you have N set to anything more than 1, it'll give you an array of images. So then if I had this set to like 4, I would have to instead of just using API response variable on its own, I would actually say API response.0.url. It's a little different. But that'll let you do it. And that's kind of just to be versatile again. So if you want to use one, we make it as easy as possible. You don't have to care about paths or formatting, but you can always go in here and change this N value. And there's even a more like a little gotcha that we had to cover where like N value on the text completion, you have to change N value. You have to also change best of. So it's a little tricky in that way, but it's really just reading through their documentation quickly. It's not too bad, but there's little things, but I think we have everything covered. And obviously, if you use this action and you come across something that doesn't work, just like shout us out because we'd love to update it and make everything as much as possible work in here. So that's image. And then I don't know, I was gonna just sort of like talk a little bit about OpenAI API because there's a lot you can do. But so I'll just do this quickly and then I'm gonna shoot back to the comments and see if anyone wants to talk about anything else. But it's if you come to the overview on the OpenAI, you can see there's text completion and there's image generation right here. So those are the first 2 that we've covered with Bildr actions. So I just wanted to show this and mention that we'll basically follow through and complete out all of these sections as custom Bildr actions. They're basically all the different endpoints and all the different things you can do. And as you learn more about this, there's some really cool stuff. Like we didn't make in the image generation one, we didn't make this yet, but you can send it to an endpoint where you give it an image, but you make part of it transparent, or you send another image as a transparent mask. And then it'll replace, and you give it a text prompt, and it'll replace the transparent part with whatever you said from the text prompt and match it to the rest of the image. And so like you can get these really powerful tools. You know, everything is a tool, which is really cool as a builder. Everything's just a building block. So we're going to basically put as many of those in place as we can, and hopefully like allow all of our users to capture this AI wave right now without having to learn all the in-depth stuff, just having to learn the concepts of like what a prompt is. Of course, like, you know, can't shortcut that, but we're going to try to shortcut everything else. So I'm going to go to these prompts now, or these questions now. A little fried today. So yeah, good resources for learning about and finding good prompts. I don't know, like I don't have great resources off the top of my head, but I do know that like if you're using OpenAI, which is what our actions are, they have some stuff in these guides. So you go to their documentation, you go to guides. If you read through this stuff, like this section is called prompt design, they basically tell you a lot of the gotchas and a lot of the things you need to do for their API specifically. So if you're using OpenAI, this is probably the best place to start. But I bet there's articles, Medium articles, and other things. Or yeah, OpenAI Discord. That's a great place. Each of the different ones. So there's like Stable Diffusion and Midjourney and OpenAI. Each of them has a Discord, and I don't actually use them enough. Now that that's mentioned, I should probably be in their Discords more. But that's probably the best place. I feel like in modern times, it's how it works. And then their documentation is a good place too, because they want you to write good prompts. So they teach you. Like I know Midjourney, I do a lot of image stuff with, and they have sections in their app where it's just like tells you different tricks and they have little flags you can actually do in their prompts to do different things. So yeah, and infrared ghost, these are definitely all just API calls. The difference is or if you would call it a difference, but one thing is that some of the stuff that you send has to be in very specific formatting. So like the numbers have to be numbers, they can't have quotes. So when you use the API call action in Bildr, you can do it. That's how I did this at first, but it's just you have to be like sort of meticulous. Like I think I was forming my post body JSON on my own instead of using the built-in stuff in the action. So that's why that's one of the main reasons why we wanted to convert this into our own kind of like wrapped up actions where you don't have to think about any of that. And you can also, I don't know if you were talking about something before that, but if you wanted to do one of these actions that we had, but slightly different, you can duplicate one of these actions, go into the JSON of the action and change a couple little things. You can change the endpoint to the API, you can change whatever, and you can get it done that way too. That would probably be easier than going direct from the API action. Yeah, just reading through the comments, I definitely agree about the opportunity and how startups are just popping up to do this stuff. I'm actually trying to do it myself. I'm making like all these little apps in Bildr that just use these actions and just thinking like, what can I make that's AI? Like, what do people need? And it's funny because it's almost like whoever makes it first in each little niche, it can capture an audience. But really all it is like everyone's just using the same OpenAI API. Can CSS animation be imported directly from code? I think so. If I understand that question correctly, there's an element. I think I can just stick this somewhere. I'll just stick this in here. There's an element that we have called code block. And this is like how I always do CSS animations in Bildr, by the way. But if you put a code block in, you can set the tag to style, and then you can write an animation basically like by hand. So it looks like this. Like actually, this. I don't remember if this is the format exactly, but it's something like this. You'd have to look it up, and you say like. But animation code would look like this. So if this is the part you're saying, then yes, you can just, if you find keyframe code anywhere on the internet, you can just grab it and paste it in here. And like this element will display that code right out. And the way that CSS animation works is you do a little code block for the animation itself, and then you give it a name here. And so if I wanted to use it on a different div, I'd give it a style of like animation, give it the name, 0.25 seconds, etc. So you can basically paste in the code of the animation itself and then use it in our style editor. So it's a nice little mix of code and Builder. Nice. Oh, for other diffusion, I'm just reading through the comments still. But yeah, saying that the question about the API would be like for other systems. And yes, not only can you use our API action for other systems, but I think what we're going to do is as soon as we can, just follow this with unique custom actions for the other systems too. Like we're trying to basically be as versatile as possible. It's just, I think OpenAI is the lowest hanging fruit as far as connecting it up. It's actually a fairly simple API to connect up. And then, as other ones become available, like the new one, the Chat GPT, like once we can get that, as soon as that's available, I'm sure we'll stick that into Studio. And I would love that Midjourney. Midjourney is my favorite. I've been doing so much fun stuff on Midjourney, but they actually run it through their Discord, which is, I thought weird at first, but really, really cool. Like you go into their Discord channel and that's where you do an image prompt and then generates it there. And other people can do variations of yours or upscale yours. So it becomes this weird community thing. But what I do in there is I'm sitting in there doing my own prompts and I'm seeing other stuff pop up. And when it's cool, I can read what their prompt is, kind of like get little tips and tricks. So their Discord is a cool way, but they might have an API for all I know, but I don't think they have an API. So as soon as they have that, I'll make that action quick. Trying to think if there's anything else that I should cover. I mean, it's only half an hour. We have it slotted for an hour, so I could take questions if you have them in the chat, or if any of the Builder team wants me to do something, chat me. But I had sort of planned to talk a little more about specific use cases, but there's just so many, so I don't even know if I should go into them. I can maybe, if there's no questions, I could touch on like some of the stuff that I've been experiencing myself with, like building myself and how I'm using these. All right, yeah, good. Couple questions. So yeah, I'll take this first. Is there a way to train models? There is a way, and I don't fully know it, but let me see if I don't know if I'll even be able to find it. I think one of them is like fine-tuned. This is might be sort of what it is. But basically, what they do is they give you ways to upload files. And I think, let's see if this says it. It says it's a JSON-L format. I don't actually know any of these specifics yet. So I don't know if that's if that's what this is or if that's something else. But basically, you give it training data in a specific format, and it builds it, puts it on top of its existing model. So it's like a way, I think, to shortcut it. But essentially, you can upload your data and then query it like the next second. So it looks crazy. And everything usually looks really nice and straightforward and simple in the docs before you try it. So I'm sure there's quirks, but I'm going to try this very soon. I've been dying to try it and try to train models. And so for example, maybe not the first thing we do because it's going to be a big deal, but what we really want to do is train it on Builder data, which is all JSON. I mean, the sky's the limit in the studio if we can do that. So, and I think we can. I think they make it pretty easy actually to do it. There might be other ways. I don't actually know. I'm not super familiar with their documentation yet, but I was reading into it, and yes, the short answer is there's ways to train the model. And so this new one, actually, this is kind of cool, so I'll mention this too. I don't know if there'll be this might work. No, there's gonna be one in here that whatever. So there's ways you can train the model where you can basically say, I actually did this. I was making a JavaScript chatbot almost, but you can't do chatbots because it's just one prompt, one response. What you can do is you can say how do I put two strings together in Java? Or I guess I would have to say this is a JavaScript chatbot ahead of time. Answer as a JavaScript chatbot. So this is a way to train it. This is what I'm getting at. How do I put two strings together? JS chatbot would say use the concat method. or whatever. And then you say you, and this is where you can, so like I just trained it on a question. I could do like 2 or 3 of those questions and ask it something specific and give it a specific format of response. And then I can say you, how do I get the first 3 letters of a word? And then you just kind of like prompt it by going like this, just chatbot, like that. So this prompt, so I say answer as a chatbot, I give it an example, and then I start one. And I don't know if this will work because it's live, but this should answer me as the JS thing. So yeah, there you go. Like you can use the substring method to get the first 2 letters of a word, for example, word, and it gives me an example. So kind of like remarkable, actually. It's so crazy how it does that. But anyway, you could put these prompts up here. You could actually train it pretty good that way. You can do a lot more than what I just did, and you can write a huge thing. Let's see. I saw a couple questions. Let me just find them in here. Combining some of these. So yeah, I mean that's a great question. So when you are doing a real application, well, it depends what you're doing, obviously, but a lot of times you might have to combine these. And the way you combine them is like anything else in Builder, where I would have, say I did a text prompt. I let it generate, whatever that response was. I wanted that response to then generate an image. So I could do this first action for the text prompt. It's going to give me the response as a variable, and I can use in this flow. And then here, instead of setting a response into this box, I don't have to set it into the box. I can actually run the next OpenAI action. So I can do image generation, and the prompt, I can take it from that response variable, just like that. And then that response, whatever it is, as like a builder of the app, when my users are using this, I would never even know what it is. It would just work, and it would give you the image. That's how you, I mean, that's like anything else in Builder. It actually is, it's nice. It fits really into Builder's system. So you can chain it together just like anything else and get as complex as you need to get. When do we get these actions? Like 5 minutes after this live stream, if you want them. Let's see. Can you have the text output create a prompt for the image generator? Yeah, that's basically what I showed. It's just, all it's doing is when you do the text prompt, you get a variable of the response, and the response is just text. So you can do whatever you want with it. You can actually like combine it with other things. So you might say, do an image in this style, blah, 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 based on this prompt, and then like concatenate in the prompt. You can get pretty advanced. Will AI token use be tied to build? That's a good question. So for this, I mean, it's a funny question, but also like for this action, what's actually going on is you're putting your own OpenAI API key in the Builder when you use this. So Builder is not paying for this API at all. You're doing that, and it's I don't remember all the specifics of their billing, but I know like I've been using it more than I think for this ring. Let's see what I've been charged so far. They give you $18 for free to start, and so I've used $1.23 of that. And like I'm making a lot of API calls. I'm trying a lot of ideas and building this action, everything. So I think it's fairly cheap. I think I did know Scott from Laser just told me, actually, it's like 2 cents. I can't remember. It's a very cheap thing, but you do have to pay for the API technically. So yeah, you create an account, they give you that $18 free, and then if you use it, you have to put your card in. But that's all just through your own. Right here, I have my Open AI as a secret already in this project. That's how they bill me. Oh yeah, and then I see John. Let me see. I can do that real quick. So the question I just read was running 3 or 4 images and putting them into a grid list. So I'll just keep that actually there for a second. Grid list in. Maybe. There it goes. And grid list page, which will just be the image. So here. And then I'm just going to do display none on this in case we need to come back to it, but it won't get in our way. So what I did first was create the grid, which looks like this here, but in the actual execution, like if you're previewing it, it would just be blank because it's not filled in with anything yet. And then on the image generation settings, let's do 4 images. So now this is going to give 4 images into that API response variable by default. So the first thing I'll need to do is set the API response variable. I'll just set it directly into the grid list. So I have that. And then the grid list itself on this page, the image is going to be called URL, the field. And the reason I know that is through the OpenAI documentation, because I have it, the settings where you can select the response to be URL or base64. Depending on what you select there, that's going to be the key in the JSON response for the actual image. So in this case, I'm bringing back URL, so I know it's URL. So I set the grid first. If I previewed it now, you'd see the 4 grid items, but the image wouldn't work. So I just have to go bind this image. And like I said, because I know it's URL, I can just say from variable URL like this. And I think, unless I forgot something, I think that's all I need to do. So let's try it. Purple flowers in a field. Didn't work. If you saw what I missed, chat me, but I can figure it out real quick. Just going to run this again to make sure it responded correctly. It takes a little while. You can see, I mean, it takes longer to do all 4 images. So I got a 200 response. Data URL. Oh, content.data. So my bad. So it actually I have to go like this. When I set the grid list, I set it to the whole response, but actually I wanted to set it to API response.data. And that comes from, so when you have n set to 1 and it's a single image, we just like did all this in the background for you. So we just took care of it, just outputs that image. When you want it to return an array, we're just giving you their array. So I didn't realize it actually has this extra data step in there. So I think I can just not update. We'll see. I might have to refresh. I don't know. I think that the data is, let me refresh and try. I think that data is the way. I've never actually done multiple. That was the first time I tried it. So I might have even had it in the wrong spot or something. Where these prompts are coming from. Yeah, it's still not right. It gives us content. So we have data, an array, URL. Yeah, it's empty. That's weird. Oh, you know what I might need to do actually? It's JSON parse it. If you're new to Bildr live streams or office hours, this is usually how it works. You just try stuff until it works. Skis? Oh, that's weird. Tag. I didn't. Oh, Mark, you didn't have to parse it. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong, but I'm very close. It's something like this. So I'll definitely keep trying to figure this out. But if somebody has other questions, I can do other stuff too. So let's see. API response data. Yeah, I don't know. set it into this grid list. Wonder if this isn't working. Like, oh no, it didn't set any in. The API response in the network looks correct. So it's content is what we return, and then we have data here, the array URL for that first one, and here's a URL. I'm going to test it and make sure, but that's a long URL. No, I don't know if I copied that right, actually. Anyway, it is giving that in the response. Oh, actually, you know what? That's only one. Oh, maybe that's multiple images or something. Maybe something else happened. My custom action, it shouldn't be changing the path. And I did test this and it worked before. I just didn't set it into a grid list. So I don't think that's what it is, but let me just double check. This is a pretty crazy action because it doesn't have any action function, anything custom. It's all written in this JSON in here. Set page variable, content. Oh, it is content.data. So that's one thing. So basically what we did, the .data comes from their API. It probably is, whether it's n is 1 or n is 4, it probably always has .data. So we have that part hard coded. So that's one thing, is I'll need to put that back. Maybe I just need to parse this. That's what happens when I do test. When I'm typing test data, after like the 10th test, I just phone it in. All right, there we go. It looks like that's working. So yeah, so actually it was the JSON parse that I needed in this case. Probably because of the way the variable comes out and gets set out of the action is probably a little different than in Mark's case where he didn't need that. But what I ultimately did, just to be more clear and like wrap it up, is on the response, I set the grid list to API response and just did a JSON parse, because that API response was coming back with the array, but it was probably a string. So JSON parse converts into a real array, which the grid list likes better. And then on the grid list, I just had to set from variable URL, I bound it to that image. And those are the 4 in a grid list. And John, you can't do best of on images. You can do it on text. It's weird. I don't know why they don't have it on images, but best of only, that's only on the text ones. The images, they only give you n, which is the amount of them, the size, and then the response format. Mark, we can maybe add JSON parse into the response automatically, but if you have n set to, I forget how I did the condition basically, because if you have n set to 1 and it returns just the string, you don't want to JSON parse that. So if they're separate, I think they're separate in the action. I can probably just handle them separately. It's for this specific action. It's like JSON parse, or it's like the n value triggers a condition in the action to change the response. But yeah, if it can be automatic, we'll make it automatic. That's the whole point of all this, is like taking this new powerful thing and then in like Bildr fashion, just like making it so that you can still have that full power. So you might have to learn a little bit, but you don't really have to think about it. And so like, that's a good example of something you shouldn't have to think about. Even that 2 string I showed before, you shouldn't have to think about, but that one's a little harder to eliminate without eliminating, versatility. So let's see. And I see another question in here about importing a button from CodePen with its styling in HTML, which I assume is unrelated to the AI. If so, let me know. But just in general, yeah, you can sort of translate it, is the best thing I would say. Is you can see all the styles. So in Bildr, if you have an element, you have classes here that you can add styles to, or you can do inline styles. It defaults to this view. I just use this used props view, and when you hover over a new property, you can type in any CSS property, even ones that Bildr doesn't have in the system. If you type it in and press enter, it'll use it, and if it works, it'll work. So in that way, in the code pen, you can see all the styles. You just basically have to manually copy them all in. But the other thing you do to speed that up even more is there's a CSS tab over here. So like if you had, just to show a quick example, color blue, in the CSS tab, it looks just like CSS. So that's where you can copy a whole block from CodePen, paste it into the CSS, hit save here, and like it translates back and forth. You know what I mean? Like if I did like that, it'll come back into here too. That's the best way to do that. And then HTML is the same thing. It's like you can just match the elements, because we have an element for every, like these are just HTML elements behind the scenes. So like div is a div, heading is like an H1, H2, whatever. Text paragraph is a P. So you kind of have to do a little translating, but you can pretty much. I mean, I use CodePen all the time. See something I like and then just do it. It's a quick translate into Bildr. Let's see. Actually, let me pause. Let me mute this 1 second. Answer my wife's calling me. Just make sure it's. Called me to watch my son who's asleep. She just called me and hung up. It's my way of knowing to check my texts. All right. Yeah, it's cool to mention, if you're watching this live, I see that comment about Ben Tossel's AI hackathon. I wish that we would have gotten this out just a little bit sooner. I mean, we were right up against the gun trying to get it out, but this would be like the perfect thing where if you want to enter a hackathon like that, you spin Bildr up, use this action or one of these two actions, and you can get that done. I mean, you could use it today and get it done by Friday for sure. But you know, if you have an idea, the hardest part for me is really coming up with the idea itself. And I see a question here about usage rights. In OpenAI, you can actually. Do I know OpenAI? I'm pretty sure this is the true with OpenAI. I know I just read this for Midjourney, so I know for sure for Midjourney they give you like complete commercial and open rights to it. Like you can use it, you can mint it into an NFT, you can use it for a business. But for Midjourney, they also give themselves and other users the rights too, so they have like extra lined up on top. I'm pretty sure OpenAI is open rights to use it however you want. Like they own it in a way. Sorry, I'm gonna let my dog out quick. They own it in a way, but like they can use it. But I think that you're allowed to use it. I don't know. I should check because that's pretty important for making these ideas. I don't know. I'm not gonna like look through and find it on this call, I guess. But I'll look into that in case I can answer that in the Discord or something. Yeah, I don't know where I would find that. Anyway, people at Mark saying that they own it and you get a license. So it's probably not what I think. It's probably more strict than I think. But I mean, I can't imagine that there's not like if you need to use them for something commercial, there has to be a way to get it done. That's the whole point of having these APIs. They're not going to make much money if they don't open it up to commercial use. Let's see. I mean, I've got like 5 minutes left in the hour, so I don't think I need to like try to fill the time with anything else, but I can wrap it up by saying, first of all, in a minute or two, I'll go make those live so that you can all use them instantly. But that if you run into any issues, if you need help implementing in a specific way, or if you're trying to use the settings and it's not working, just chat us in Discord. We have a new AI channel, so that's a good place, or any other channels, doesn't matter. But we'll try to be as responsive as possible and like not only help, but hopefully if it's an issue someone runs into, we'll work that into the original action. They're brand new. They're kind of tested because I've been using them to test, but they're really not tested. So that's kind of cool. You can all kind of test with us. What else? Is there anything else I should say? Yeah, I don't know. I would say I'll just add that look forward to, if this is interesting stuff to you, look forward to a lot more, including, what we're maybe obviously really excited about is taking some of this AI stuff and integrating it into the actual studio so that while you're building, you can do cool AI things. It'll suggest text and images and that kind of thing. We're going to be looking to push this just as much as everyone else is. And the way we do that is by building these actions, because then we go use them because we're building Bildr with Bildr. So, yeah. And I guess before I wrap, I do say, what have I been building? Like, can't pass an opportunity to talk about that, obviously. But yeah, I've been trying ideas, some of them tests and some of them more realistic, but I want to build something that I can monetize. Like, I really think like I can just capture this little niche wave of AI if I'm smart, and I have some friends that have done it. So the first thing I built was a thing where you put in your first tweet and it generates your next 3 in a thread, and I actually did a thread with it that I posted. I wanted to do more of them like for fun, but I just tried it once, but it worked relatively well. It's in an application I already have built that I use to write tweet threads called Tweet Draft. So, and that's made in Bildr. So I just went back into that, which I haven't touched in a long time, and added this AI. And what I do is I generate the 3 tweets and then you can edit them. So it's like, they're not perfect, but it's a great start. You don't have to like really think, you just generate them. And so off of that, I built out a thing to write a blog. It basically takes, I did it where I was trying a couple ways, but I did it ultimately where it takes prompts. So you say a topic and 3 points, like 3, supporting points. And then you can do a checkbox for include an example or not, or including like an anecdotal example. So it's pretty crazy. And then it generates you a blog post. And it's the same thing. Like, you have to edit it. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. I got pretty far into this really random idea where I built, it's like a meal planner in AI. So if you want to know like what's for dinner, it'll just generate you ideas for the week or for the month. And you can tell it what kind of food you like and dislike. And I kind of like, the reason I ended up building it out is my wife and I used it and it worked, where we said like all the foods that our kids don't like and let it generate these meals. And it was like pretty good. It was good ideas and it's easy to link them to recipes. So I built that for a minute, but I stopped building it because I'm like, no one's going to pay for this. I want to focus on something I can make money off of, actually. So like I stopped that. What else? I feel like I've done a couple more, but it's kind of escaping me. I did a lot of little experiments, and like even building this action was a lot of experimenting where I was just trying different things. And I have like a doc with all these different prompts that could potentially, I go to the playground, mess with prompts, and like could potentially turn that into an app in the future. Oh, another good one I made is I made a JavaScript helper and CSS helper, which I want to finish those and put them out. I did that training thing where I did like Vue.js, checkout, that's how I knew how to do that because I already played with it. But you can ask it gets good. I have it like a setup where I say the explanation response, the actual code, and then an example, and it spits it back out like pretty good. It was really crazy. And I tried to start building a thing that said the JavaScript answer and then said the Bildr paths answer, like how to do the same thing in Bildr paths, but there's not enough. It doesn't have enough Bildr path data, I guess. But yeah, so that's what I'm building. Really though, like I said, I'm looking for a better idea. I saw today this really great idea where it's a bedtime story generator. So like I don't actually do this that much anymore, but when my son was like maybe 3, I would always have to make up stories, but he'd be like, I want a dragon, I want this, I want me, my friend. It was like very specific, but I had to make it up, and it was like challenging. There's this app where you type in those parameters and it generates you an AI bedtime story on the fly. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I see a question here. What's more important to the Bildr roadmap, AI or Web3? I wouldn't really say one's more important than the other. I think for us, we want to make sure that we give enough so that our users can play with whatever they want to play with at the time. So when Web3 was getting really popular, we needed to get the MetaMask stuff out. We needed to get some stuff out so you can play with it. And we're still all playing with it in Bildr and out of Bildr. Like, we're still into it. But we saw AI getting popular and we're like, oh, we need to make a few AI actions and just basically make sure there's enough in there. But I wouldn't say one's more important than the other, and we'll keep building up both ends. You know, it's basically like I would categorize both of those as just like cutting edge technology things that we're just, whatever that cutting edge technology thing is, we're just going to be into it and trying to accommodate for it, but also put it into the studio ourselves, kind of thing. Just reading through the comments. So yeah. So I think I have to go and watch my son. My wife needs me to watch him at 3. So it's actually perfect timing because it's 3 now. So, and I don't see more comments or anything. So yeah, thanks so much for checking it out. And then I'll put those actions live in 1 second. And then I'll come out with more documentation in this form of lessons and stuff, but at least we have this to point to people to, and hopefully we can kind of chop it up. But yeah, thanks for watching, and definitely remember to share what you build. If you build some of this AI, like I'd love to see it. I know everyone would love to see it, so share it. All right, thanks.